the larger grounds as John Abbott with McGill, but sometimes we're not aware of what the left hand and the right hand is doing. So I think this is great that we bring both communities together in an effort of sort of passing the torch and thinking a little bit about inspiring some of the people who are here about what are some of the problems that they could get involved in, what's some of the science that they could get involved in once they graduate and leave John Abbott College. So I'm going to ask a question that maybe might be of interest to many in the room, and it's all three of you, and I'll start with you, Amanda. What inspired you to pursue science?
Ooh. That's loaded. I was really into astronomy, actually, when I was a kid. I read a lot of science fiction books. I don't know if any of you guys know Isaac Asimov, who's one of my favorite writers, H.G. Wells, all those people. So I started reading like easy astrophysics books, like Stephen Hawking stuff, popular science. And then when I got to university, I went to McMaster. I always say Mac, and people are like, Macdonald Campus? And I was like, no, Hamilton. And I was in the integrated science program. So that was a research program in and of itself. And I was able to explore a lot of different facets of science, which was really cool. I think I just got into science because there's so many interesting questions to answer. And I was so curious about a lot of different things. And my undergraduate program was a great way to explore different avenues. And now I ended up in genetics and environmental science. So it was a bit of a journey, but I guess just curiosity.
I'll ask a quick follow-up.
Yeah.
Because your trajectory mirrors my own.
Okay.
So when I was studying in university, I was a biology major, as part of Science College at Concordia, completely changed my trajectory. I ended up in quantum physics. What changed for you where it went from astronomy to Arctic cod?
Yeah. I really enjoyed, like I took biophysics classes. I was doing also some like quantum stuff in second and third year. And it was really interesting. But I realized that I really don't like theoretical math. And some things can just be a hobby. So I'm still interested in like astrophysics and astronomy from the sense that I will read articles about it. But I think I got into environmental science because I just really love being outside. And when I was a kid, I would go outside and be like, what is this called? What is this doing? Why is the sky blue? Why are leaves green and stuff? And it was just a natural progression. I started really loving the classes that were more tending that way. So yeah, and that's happened, I'm sure you can attest to that too. You start in high school or stage up or wherever you think you're gonna go one way and it changes like 4 times. Like I was in biophysics and then I was in stats coming out from the astronomy thing and then I went into environmental science. This is all in like 3 years, by the way, too, so.
How about you, Ekua?
Yeah, so for me, I also wanted to go to space. I still want to go to space. And then I figured that to go to space, you needed to be healthy. So my life went into, okay, let's go into medicine. And so in high school, I studied physics, biology, all of it. And then went to university, and I sat in a class, Nutrition 101, and then the lecturer said, you are what you continuously eat. And that struck me. Because for me, I was like, okay, so I'm in charge of my health. So rather than being a medical doctor, which is at the end of the spectrum, I wanted to go to prevention. How do I help with prevention? And so I started studying, I went into this very long way, biological science, then I went to food science and then nutrition, and I'm here today.
There you go. How about you, Preet?
So, I wanted to go to medical science as well. Wanted to be a doctor, I remember. And it was quite early days of my undergrad that I got the opportunity to visit Japan on an exchange program from my undergrad course. So while I was there, this is the time when I'm preparing for my medical university exams and day and night I'm putting my efforts, and it's like exchange program, so it was like more fun trip for me rather than being on exchange trip. It was never thinking. But yeah, I got this, so there was this competition that was going on where Professor Takuyo Hishida, who's an ex-Nobel laureate as well. So he was there visiting and there was a competition. We were given some challenges and I answered that particular question, to which I don't know how it got in my mind. I have really no clue. But I kind of solved it and he just came to me and said that, you have a good thinking. And so when I came back home, I realized, I don't know. I don't know why is it that way that I answered it, but it kind of changed, like that particular incident, it stayed in my mind for very, very long. And it kind of changed my trajectory all along. So I started reading more and more about plants and everything, more interested, and I met some really cool researchers all over the world. And yeah, just kind of everything converging led me to here, be under Anya. She's an amazing prof, so it's like, let's do a PhD in Canada. And so yeah, coming from India, it was really challenging, the cold weather, but surprisingly I loved it as well. So I loved it classes.
All right. So you all touched upon sustainability and its relationship to what you're studying, right? But you all described quite nicely your own trajectory and how you started off in the sciences. Yes, some left turns, some right turns. But you know, traditionally, as scientists, we tend to be very focused on the knowledge that I'm accruing, my content knowledge, and sometimes we have a habit, like culturally, of staying in our lane. We don't get involved in the politics, we don't get involved in the societal things, and yet everything you guys talked about, you brought it into the larger context of where your science is situated in the world. How has your involvement with sustainability changed your point of view of who you are becoming as a scientist and the importance of where your science fits into larger societal issues? I'll start this time with you, Preet.
So in terms of sustainability, when you're in a research lab, you're doing a lot of science work, and you get to know, okay, in the next 10, 15 years, you're going to have a crop which can, maybe sustain a 45 degrees Celsius temperature, or maybe you'll have crops growing in -5, -10 degrees Celsius. So everything is a possibility. But other than science, what's really important is that people should have a thinking. The policymakers should have a knowledge as to where they should lead the future. And so this is really challenging in terms of the policymakers, because we kind of have environmental laws, we have climate change laws, we have a lot of stuff that's going around the world. And yet we are not able to stop the inevitable climate change that's coming. We are going to lose our planet, much of the planet, by 2050. That's true in the sense nature. The UN Biodiversity Day is going to come soon, and you will see people flying from all over the world in their private jets, spending a lot of CO2 emissions, and they're going to talk about 2 minutes as to, oh, we have done this, we have stopped forest cutting, we are doing great. This is not the way we can actually think about sustainable future. So science is doing its job. The policymakers should do their job. And at the same time, funding in science is a big thing, because science is contributing a lot. But when it comes to basic science biology like the plants, we don't have that funding. You get fundings for Alzheimer's diseases, diabetes, which is good, which should be there. But what about the crops? What about the food that we are eating every day? So a lot of policy changes should definitely there. That's my opinion for a sustainable future.
I'll throw it to you, Ekua. I'm thinking too about just where is your mindset maybe shifted to in terms of, I was studying scientist, I'm going to be a scientist, but now you're sort of trying to think more broadly. How has that changed your view about, when you go into the lab, how has it changed your mindset?
Okay, so for me, I'm looking at the end of the day, we, as humans, we need to be sustainable. Everybody talks about sustainability in a different way, the environment and all of that, but as the human being, we need to live long and ahead. And for me, my lab is opening my eyes to indigenous ways of doing things. And I like the way they have this culture of, let's think 8 generations ahead, which is something that, at least from where I'm coming from, we don't think that way. I don't know if it's the same. So it's something that and I'm really passionate about children, because for me, children are the future. And it's always, I always have this Michael Jackson song, the other world, so how do we help them? So I say that that's what has, it's given me the edge to go through this way in my studies, and also to help contribute, to, I say life?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I feel.
Amanda, same thing.
Could you repeat the last bit of your question?
Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to get at is, how has your thinking as a scientist changed because of the broader context that you now bring your own research into the world, right? Like, so there's
Yeah.
societal concerns, there's political concerns, economic concerns, you know, cultural concerns in your particular case. How has it changed from like, I'm just studying genes and God, to now, oh, I have a bigger context that I'm playing into?
Yeah, I thought that the previous question was loaded.
Yeah.
For this one, I think it's actually not a response exactly to that. I would say that I came in, going into science, I came into science because I had issues with policy. I had issues with political leaders. I had issues with what was being done and what wasn't being done. So I'd say honestly, coming into a space where I'm doing research at this high level in an institution, it's actually, this might not be super inspiring, but it's a little bit more stifling because
Interesting.
you are very set, like, yeah, I'm looking at genes, and I find that a lot of people, professors and stuff, aren't as open to hearing about the impacts that it would have. They don't really care as much, they just want to get their funding and put their research out. So I think it's really important that going into science, scientists come in with like a raison d'être, you know? They come in with a reason for being there, a reason for doing the work that they're doing, and I think it's, again, like wanting to change the world. I honestly am debating right now between getting a PhD after this or going into law school because I feel like scientists are so often sometimes ignored. I know you guys can speak to that as well. I've worked for the government before for the Department of Fisheries, and it was an amazing experience, but there's different levels of government that were in the same building, and you literally weren't allowed to like talk to policymakers unless it was like through email and official stuff. So it's very complicated. These are institutions that we need. The government is great, like we shouldn't lose faith in our institutions. However, I do think that being a scientist now, it shows even more how much we need to push for making sure our science is applicable to communities.
Awesome. I'll throw it to the floor. Like, if there's any questions, don't be shy, raise a hand. There's no dumb questions. We're all here to learn. Just looking around.
Do you have questions about like our labs and what
Yeah,
we do?
I mean,
And like I didn't talk about my genetic, like actual what I'm doing. So if you have a question about PCR, doing stuff in the lab, volunteering in the lab.
Yeah, go ahead, Kieran.
Can you tell me about your lab and what you're doing?
Absolutely. So literally right now what I'm doing is I talked a bit about gene expression. How many of you guys are familiar with RNA? Okay, this is great. Easy, easy. So I'm basically quantifying the amount of RNA expressed in gill rakers for specific genes that I'm looking at so that I can confirm that those are the genes that are responsible for gill raker development. So specifically what I'm doing right now is cutting open the fish, taking their gill rakers, putting them in a buffer, whacking the heck out of them, swishing them around, and then I'm going to run a quantitative Loomer's chain reaction to see how much of that gene expression is in different fish across different areas of the ocean and across different ages. So very nitty-gritty, that's what I'm doing. It's really interesting, and I don't know if they have programs at McGill for like SageUp students to come into labs, but I mean, if you guys are ever interested, just hit me up and I'll sneak you in. So.
We used to have this Mac mentoring program.
Yeah.
It kind of sort of fizzled a bit
I think
before
that's
the
what I was
pandemic,
referencing.
and it's probably time to restart that.
I agree.
Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
What would you say the ratio of field work versus lab work?
That's a great question. So field work to lab work is the question. What's the ratio? Maybe I'll throw it to you first, Preet.
So it totally depends. The shift is now real towards more lab work than field work. This is something that's happening. People are transitioning towards more lab work simply because there's more funding. So, but yeah, some of the great scientists I know, AFFC is working really good. In our campus, we have lots of field work that's going on with forage crops. So yeah, traditional breeding and molecular breeding. That's the two terms how we use. So how you can make plant more efficient through molecule techniques, that's DNA RNA. You can make plants more efficient by crossing them with each other, so that's a different technique. And both of these techniques are really useful. So balance is more towards lab, but that field is never ignored. It's the golden instrument.
Yeah, for me, it's field work. Yeah, because we're working with indigenous communities and we want to help them. So it's better to be in their confines of comfort, and then we help them with whatever issues they face. So it's mostly fieldwork for us.
For me, it's a lot of lab work, a lot of office work, but I will be going to the Arctic this summer for a period of about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So there definitely are opportunities no matter what you do for field work, but like you said, the funding, you definitely have to push for that if you want to get going out there.
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
What was most striking to each of you about the transition from CEGEP to university?
Okay. Did any of you guys go to Seychelles?
I'm from Ontario.
I don't know what it is.
So let's go with what was most striking for you. Put it into context. Your transition from high school to university.
Oh.
To freshman year.
Okay. Transition.
I'll go with
Maybe
the
I'll
first.
start.
Yeah, go ahead.
So for us, you either go through a science stream, so you study everything science, or an art stream. So I chose science because, I wanted to go to space, remember? And then, once I was done, I went to undergrad and I wanted to do medicine, but my trajectory changed to nutrition, right? So what was striking? For me, it was that class. Going back from high school, it was more like, how do I describe it? First year of university was like a little buffer of high school. So easy. I've done physics, until I went to second year, I was like, oh, this is different, because organic chemistry was something. Physics, I almost failed. And then I was like, well, let me move to the health sciences. That's more relatable. I know the hearts, let's do that. So that was it for me. The class just changed my mind, and I went to nutrition. And another part of my life is I finished school knowing that I wanted to do health sciences, but I worked in business.
Ah.
So I've worked for 10 years, more than 10 years, doing business. Okay, so doing sales, doing marketing, doing project management. And one thing I would advise is that there's no experience that is wasted. Okay, because I could have said, like you said, I want to do science, and no, if I'd done that, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'd be in some lab somewhere and not moved. So just be open to life, because life throws a lot at you, and just
I can jump in a little bit on building on that actually. Biggest difference I think from high school to university was just the sheer amount of information. If you have so many classes, some of it is review, but you have like 6 classes of high level review in first year, so definitely workload. You're totally capable though. It's not easy, but you guys can definitely do it. It's a lot to kind of get adjusted to, but then I know you didn't ask, but also for that stuff in terms of like changing your path, I just want to say that will happen, and to not resist it and fight it. A lot of people start on that pre-med path, and while that's great, and if that is your path and you really want to pursue it, you totally can, and you can totally succeed in it, but just be open to change. I think also another huge difference from high school and you guys, Seja, it's really nice that you have this little transition period, but I got some looks there, maybe not. I think it's cool because when you get to university, you're kind of just thrust into adulthood. There's nobody chasing you. There's nobody that's going to tell you to do your work. So, yeah, I think it's just a big push, but you guys are totally capable.
Just to add on that, of course it's a big push, but be passionate. So I use 2 words, that's being passionate and being curious. Always be curious, because when you're curious, you're going to be open-minded. And when you're passionate, you can actually go through anything that you face. So definitely many of you will be like, okay, let's go on a pre-med path, let's be an engineer or something like that. Be open-minded. If you are interested in, let's suppose, calculus, you can be an expert in calculus and be an expert in Python coding, which I'm terrible at, but you can be an expert in it for sure. So just be curious and be passionate. Learn everything with a heart like, okay, I don't know anything, I'm just kind of here to grab something. So just learn, be passionate. I'm going to do that.
Awesome. Any other questions from the floor, guys? Yeah, go for it.
I'm curious what you're interested in doing after you finish your graduate degrees.
That's a great question.
That question comes from a PhD student. Good job, Fan.
Yeah, so what are you interested in doing after your graduate studies?
I kind of went into it a bit, potentially PhD, potentially law school, potentially working. I think my answer kind of shows that even now when you guys are like, crap, like I gotta choose a path, I gotta figure out what I want to do. No, you don't. I'm 23. I don't know. I know people who are 25, 30 still figuring out your career is going to change, your interests and your paths in academia are going to change. So, not sure is my answer.
What do I say? So this is my second master's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so after school, I wanted to go straight to do master's and PhD. And then my dad stopped me. I thought he hated me, but he did me good. He did, because I was going to do food technology. That was what I wanted to do right after. And he said, go work. So that's what I did. I applied, and trust me, you get disappointed, and you would apply so many times, and you may not get it. So that's what I did, and I worked for, like I mentioned, more than 10 years, and then I decided, let's go back to school, because now I want to work with nutrition research, sustainability. So if you ask me what I want to do next, like Amanda said, I don't know, maybe PhD, I don't know, maybe go back to work, but I'm open to whatever opportunities that come up.
So yeah, definitely. Thanks, Fan, for asking this question. So, yeah, I'm still high on energy. For me, it's about, as I mentioned, I'm really passionate about learning more and more. So with this project, what I realized is that I'm really bad at maths and engineering, so why not learn it? So now I'm learning actually coding, maths, engineering, how we model and everything. And so after my PhD, I really want to get on a path of being a researcher, doing a postdoc, join a good university in Canada or anywhere in the world. The opportunity knocks on my door. And yeah, just stay passionate, learn, and then maybe teach some of you in the universities. Let's hope I do that. But yeah, that's my part. So I'm still passionate and energetic about it.
Okay, I'm going to ask one last question. All right, so all three of you. Start with you, Preet. Everybody in this room is pretty much still in like that classroom phase, right? We're getting a little bit of like hands dirty in the lab, but really it's like classroom textbook kind of thing. I remember for me, when I got into a lab, it was a mind-changing experience. The way I looked at science, the way I studied science, actually I had to study less to understand more. What changed about your mindset of doing science once you finally got into a lab and started doing something like that?
Well, the first day I got into a real scientific lab, I got to know, well, I don't know anything. So the way we were taught things back in high school or maybe undergrad, so even in undergrad I never stepped into a real science lab. It was only when I was doing my master's that I got to the opportunity of doing things by myself. So putting first PCR, holding my first pipette and everything. And so I really got to know I have no clue. I'm doing everything absolutely wrong. And so the postdoc who was working in my lab, he came to me. I won't mention his name, but yeah, he was a bit rude to me. He just said, don't you know anything from your undergrad? I was like, I was answering everything right. I got an appreciation from ex-Nobel laureate, and you're saying that I don't know anything. That's terrible. But I kind of changed my mind and thought, okay, if I don't know anything, let's learn and be better than him, if I can. I don't know. And so I started fresh. I started learning things back again. And this is why I mentioned that whenever you try to do something new, whether you are stepping in a real scientific lab or whether you're going to step in a university after this, just be passionate. Think that you're the most dumbest in the classroom at that point, and just learn. Be quiet, be calm, and learn. One day, you're going to be better than everyone else in that room. That's the secret. That's the secret. That's the secret. Be passionate, be quiet, and learn.
Sit down.
Yeah, be humble. Be humble.
How about you, Ekua?
So for me, the lab work made what I was studying more practical. Because I'm very imaginative, and I mean, the books were too boring, and I mean, let's go back to something like a pendulum. I'm like, wow, my accounting, like, for me, it was just too boring. So I would say that it made life more practical, and then I could answer life questions a bit more. So I was very curious in life. What I do is I try to apply, okay, so I studied this in the lab, I just learned this from the book, how can I apply it? So there's always that application bit of it, and which is what has gotten me to where I am today. So it made life more, okay, now I see. So I really love Preet's, community. I'm like, oh, okay, things are moving, and I try to ask questions, all the time. So just try to always ask yourself, I'm studying this, how can I apply it? What is the use of what I'm studying? And then that's, I think, some good money.
All right, final word, Amanda.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Sure.
I'm like, what was the question?
So when we start off sort of learning science, it's a lot of like textbook, a lot of classroom. Started getting a bit into the lab, but then when you actually work in a science lab, how does it shift your mindset about studying and learning science?
I felt like that big brain meme, honestly. Everything just started making sense. I felt like, the meme where like your prefrontal cortex is developing. You get in the lab, and especially for my undergrad, it was integrated science, so we did everything from thermo to astronomy to plant science. So when I finally got to my master's, I had all this knowledge about so many different avenues of science, I guess, and then I was finally able to hone in on one. And I think having a broader context of science, like in SAGEP in university, it allows you to, when you do focus on one pathway, you have all this other knowledge of policy, and for me, how genetics relates to ocean temperature, acidification. These are all background knowledge that come to play, and you just laser focus in. So I think for the lab, the application part of it, you have all this knowledge, and you finally have somewhere to funnel it. And also being hands-on is great too, because again, you read a protocol, me describing how I'm extracting RNA, you're like, okay. But when you actually do it and work through the steps, just kind of everything coalesces together and makes sense. And I've heard that from a few other students as well. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much to all our panelists. So pretty much brings us to the end of the event. Before you run off, just quick acknowledgements. So first to Ingrid Shiraz, and they will be here in a couple weeks. So part of the 24 hours of science, let's celebrate science. So again, thanks to funding from the Lister family, we will be hosting more graduate students who will come and talk a little bit about the science that they're doing. I think you've conscripted these people to show up again.
Yes, they'll be here again. They don't know it yet.
So I encourage you to bring a friend from the science program. I'm looking around the room, there's maybe 3 of you from the regular science program. Grab a friend, bring them in. These are just sort of the experiences that can be transformative. And it's great to hear about what else is out there. And I think that's the message, that's a take home for me, is just keep your mind open about science. Yes, there are many trajectories we already have in mind, but you'd be surprised what other opportunities are out there. So, and it's great thanks to things like what Ingrid does, this sort of outreach that really helps to open our eyes. And maybe it's inspired somebody in the room here to do something a little bit different than they thought they were going to station for. Big ups to Kieran Hackett. And the library and media services team who helped set this all up for us. It's wonderful. A shameless plug also, Monday is the Science Career Day. Make sure you show up, go check it out. As opposed to looking at the academic sector, we're bringing in people from the industrial sector to come answer your questions about what's out there in terms of opportunities for jobs, once you graduate university, what are the sectors that are sort of booming right now, what's your earning potential. There's even potential for summer work, and again, that's sort of why the way I asked that question, because I think once you actually start getting into a real-world application of what you're learning, it is a transformative process. So I encourage everybody here to explore those opportunities.